Hello everyone, John A.G. here. Welcome back to my channel Aurex. If you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel. In this channel, you will find the real information, real market updates that everyone cannot tell you. So please subscribe to this channel, and love you all of my subscribers for your support. And please watch this video till the very end, because YouTube will not push my videos to more people. The algorithms favor the comforting lies. They favor the mindless distractions and the superficial noise. But here at Aurex, we deal in the currency of truth. We focus on the harsh, unfiltered signal, no matter how profoundly uncomfortable it might be. So, I need you to grab a cup of coffee, sit down, clear your mind of the weekend distractions, and listen to me as closely as you have ever listened to anyone in your life. Because the world as we understood it yesterday no longer exists today. Today is Sunday, May 10th, 2026. While the vast majority of the Western world was sleeping, spending time with their families, or simply preparing for another mundane week at the office, a financial and geopolitical earthquake of unprecedented magnitude struck the sun-scorched deserts of the Middle East. It was not a natural disaster. It was a cold, deliberate, and perfectly calculated shockwave engineered in the highest echelons of power. It is a shockwave that is about to violently ripple through every single stock exchange, every neighborhood grocery store, and every local gas station on planet Earth. Saudi Arabia has officially, without warning and without apology, halted a staggering $200 billion oil trade block. I need you to let that number fully sink into your consciousness. $200 billion. Let me be absolutely clear about what we are witnessing. This is not a temporary pipeline maintenance issue or a minor logistical hiccup in the Red Sea. This is not a slight incremental production cut negotiated by bureaucrats in a plush, air-conditioned hotel in Vienna during a routine OPEC Plus meeting. This is a deliberate, historical severing of the most vital energy arteries that keep the human machine alive. Saudi Arabia has just reached out and pulled the emergency brake on the global economy, and the true global oil price shock has officially, irrevocably begun. If you think this is just a story about numbers on a trading screen, you are entirely missing the invisible war being waged for the future of human survival. To understand the sheer, terrifying magnitude of what happened today, we cannot look at this isolated event in a vacuum. We have to look at the raging fire that has been systematically burning across the globe for the last 5 months. The year 2026 has already been permanently etched into the history books as a year of unparalleled chaos and systemic breakdown. We watched in stunned, breathless silence as geopolitical tensions exploded into Operation Epic Fury earlier this year. We saw the skies over the Middle East light up with the terrifying glow of conflict. We saw the Strait of Hormuz, the most critical, delicate choke point for global energy, a narrow strip of water that handles over 20% of the world's daily oil consumption, effectively choked off by military blockades, asymmetric warfare, and relentless brinkmanship. During those dark weeks, we saw the global benchmark for Brent crude violently, uncontrollably spike past $125 a barrel. We watched the International Energy Agency scrambling in pure panic, issuing emergency warnings about the largest, most devastating supply disruption in the history of the modern global oil market. The entire world watched as roughly 10 million barrels of oil a day were suddenly, violently thrown into jeopardy, threatening to plunge nations into immediate darkness. But through all of that sheer terror, the Western financial markets and the political elite held on to a desperate, foolish hope. The narrative aggressively peddled by mainstream financial media, the soothing lies broadcasted on every major news network, was that Saudi Arabia would step in to be the ultimate savior of the West. The talking heads in tailored suits told us that the kingdom would simply divert its massive crude reserves, pumping millions of barrels a day through the Yanbu port to the Red Sea, completely bypassing the blockaded and dangerous Strait of Hormuz. They told us that Saudi Arabia's legendary excess capacity would act as a massive shock absorber for the global economy. They looked right into the camera and told you that everything was going to be fine. But here at Aurex, we do not buy the mainstream narrative. We do not swallow the comforting pills offered by desperate politicians trying to save their poll numbers. We look deep at the underlying currents of the global power structure. And today, that current just turned into a devastating, unstoppable tsunami. By intentionally halting this massive $200 billion oil trade, Saudi Arabia is sending a deafening message that echoes far, far beyond the frantic trading pits of Wall Street or the quiet, wood-paneled boardrooms of London. They are telling the entire world that the old rules, the old promises, and the old empires are dead. For exactly 52 years, the global economy has run on a very specific, carefully engineered operating system, the petrodollar. Let me take you back to 1974. In the devastating wake of the Arab oil embargo, the United States and Saudi Arabia struck a historic, world-altering bargain. The United States would provide unconditional military security, advanced weapons systems, and diplomatic protection to the kingdom. In exchange, Saudi Arabia agreed to price its most valuable resource exclusively in United States dollars, and then take those massive, unimaginable profits and recycle them back into the American financial system by buying U.S. Treasury bonds. That single, unwritten agreement was the absolute bedrock of American financial supremacy for half a century. It meant that every single nation on the face of the earth, whether it was the industrial powerhouse of Germany, the export engine of Japan, or a developing nation in South America, had to frantically acquire and hold US dollars if they wanted to import the energy needed to keep their lights on, their hospitals running, and their citizens alive. It created an artificial, bottomless, insatiable global demand for the greenback. It gave the West the ultimate superpower, the ability to print money out of thin air, run massive, eye-watering deficits, and export its own inflation to the poorest nations on Earth without facing the immediate consequences. That era did not just end today, it was assassinated. Today's $200 billion trade halt is the final, undeniable nail in the coffin of the petrodollar hegemony. You must ask yourself this one terrifying question. Why would Saudi Arabia intentionally blow up the system that made them wealthy? The answer is simple. The geopolitical landscape of 2026 is entirely unrecognizable from the world of 1974. The BRICS alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, now expanded to include major energy producers and massive emerging populations, has solidified into a formidable, aggressive counterweight to Western economic dominance. Saudi Arabia sees the writing clearly on the wall. They see a Western world that is morbidly obese with unsustainable, unpayable debt. They see governments paralyzed by extreme political division, societal decay, and a frantic, aggressive push for a green energy transition that directly threatens the kingdom's core, lifeblood revenue stream. More importantly, Saudi Arabia is undergoing its own profound existential transformation. Under the banner of Vision 2030, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is not just managing an oil company, he is attempting to build a new empire. They are constructing trillion-dollar futuristic megacities straight out of science fiction, right in the middle of the desert. They are aggressively diversifying their national portfolio into artificial intelligence, global sports conglomerates, and advanced military technology. To fund this monumental pivot, they need the absolute maximization of their physical assets. They do not need to accumulate rapidly devaluing United States debt that yields less than the real rate of inflation. They need hard, tangible assets. They need cutting-edge technology transfers. And most importantly, they need reliable, long-term buyers who will not arbitrarily weaponize their currency, freeze their central bank reserves, or lecture them on domestic policies. They are looking to the East. They are looking at the insatiable, massive energy demands of China, India, and the broader, rapidly industrializing global South. This historic $200 billion halt is not merely a temporary cessation of pumping oil, it is a calculated redirection of global power. It is a massive, structural pivot away from Western dependency and a stark, unapologetic refusal to settle physical trades under the old, dying terms of the fiat dollar system. It is the absolute weaponization of essential supply. But what does this actually mean for you? What does this mean for the ordinary, hardworking person who is just trying to make an honest living, provide a safe home for their family, and navigate a world that feels increasingly hostile, expensive, and out of control? This is where the macroeconomic numbers stop being abstract concepts on a spreadsheet and start becoming painfully, tragically human. When you hear the phrase global oil price shock, I do not want you to just think of red arrows pointing downward on a Bloomberg terminal. I want you to think of the actual heartbeat of the human economy. Oil is not just the liquid you pump into your car to get to work. It is the literal lifeblood of modern human civilization. It is the thick, heavy diesel roaring in the engines of the massive trucks that deliver the food to your local supermarket every single night. It is the high-grade jet fuel that keeps the global skies open and connected. It is the foundational, irreplaceable ingredient in modern plastics, life-saving pharmaceuticals, asphalt for our roads, and most crucially, the synthetic fertilizers that allow us to feed 8 billion people. Right now, Exactly as you watch this video, the World Bank's most grim, terrifying prophecies for 2026 are materializing, but on a scale far worse, far more rapid than they predicted just a few short weeks ago. They warned us in their official reports that energy prices were projected to surge by 24% this year. But with this unexpected $200 billion shock, that projection is entirely obsolete. We are staring down the barrel of a reality where crude oil prices could easily, effortlessly breach $150, perhaps even spike toward $200 a barrel, as global strategic petroleum reserves are violently drawn down to dangerously, precariously low levels. I want you to deeply consider the human reality of a truck driver in Ohio, an independent, hard-working operator who poured every ounce of his life savings, his blood, and his sweat into buying his rig. For him, diesel is not a traded commodity. It is his entire livelihood. When the price of diesel suddenly doubles at the pump, his razor-thin profit margins simply vanish into thin air. He cannot afford the fuel to take the loads. He is forced to park his rig. And when thousands of independent truckers are forced to stop rolling, the complex, fragile logistics networks shatter. The supermarket shelves go empty. The panic buying begins. I want you to think about the single mother living in an apartment in London or Berlin or Boston, staring with absolute dread at her utility bill in the dead, freezing cold of winter. The cost of natural gas, heating oil, and electricity is intrinsically, permanently tied to the global energy complex. When global energy prices surge, it is not just an economic indicator. It is a brutal, regressive, devastating tax on the poor and the working middle class. Millions of people will be forced to make the brutal, heartbreaking, inhumane choice between turning on the heat to keep their children warm or buying enough groceries to keep them fed. This is not dramatic hyperbole. This is the cold, mathematical reality of a sudden global energy shock. And the horror goes so much deeper than just heating and transportation. The most terrifying existential aspect of this crisis is global food security. There is a direct, unbreakable chemical chain linking the price of natural gas and crude oil to the price of urea and nitrogen-based fertilizers. When energy prices explode upward, fertilizer prices skyrocket in tandem. We are already witnessing fertilizer affordability plummeting to its absolute worst levels in modern recorded history. Think about the small-scale farmer in Nigeria, the agricultural worker in Kenya, or the generational farmer in rural India. They are already operating on the edge of survival, battling weather extremes and tight margins. When the cost of the fertilizer they desperately need triples overnight, they simply cannot afford to purchase it. They are forced to plant fewer acres. Their crop yields inevitably mathematically collapse. A few months down the line, that localized reduction translates to significantly lower grain harvests on a global scale. It translates to soaring, uncontrollable food inflation in every nation on Earth. Bread, rice, corn, wheat, the very basic, fundamental staples of human survival, become luxury items unaffordable for hundreds of millions of people. As the World Bank rightly pointed out, war is development in reverse. But a sudden, severe energy shock is a direct, unfiltered attack on the fundamental human right to sustenance and survival. This is the real, raw information that the mainstream media purposefully glosses over. Tomorrow morning, they will bring on highly paid analysts to casually talk about supply chain bottlenecks and central bank interest rate policies. They will debate endlessly whether the Federal Reserve will implement a quarter-point hike or announce a temporary pause. But they will not look directly into the tired eyes of the working class and tell them the brutal, undeniable truth. The golden era of cheap, abundant, reliable energy that physically built the modern middle class over the last 70 years is effectively, permanently over. We are actively entering a period of the most profound, aggressive wealth transfer in human history. The sovereign oil-exporting nations that can still reliably get their physical product to the hungry markets, those operating entirely outside the chaotic, dangerous blockades of the Persian Gulf, or those who have successfully and quietly pivoted their pipelines to the east, are going to experience an unbelievable, historic financial windfall. Saudi Arabia, despite the global chaos they are currently amplifying, or perhaps exactly because of it, is perfectly positioned to post record-shattering, astronomical profits. They are ruthlessly leveraging their unique geographic position, their massive, sprawling Ghawar and Kurayz oil fields, and their highly strategic, heavily defended Red Sea ports to become the undisputed, unchallengeable kings of the new multipolar energy reality. Meanwhile, the commodity importing nations, especially the highly vulnerable developing economies in sub-Saharan Africa and densely populated parts of Asia, will be completely crushed under the immense, suffocating weight of massively higher import costs and a strengthening, relentless local inflation dynamic. Their carefully accumulated sovereign wealth will be rapidly, mercilessly drained away just to keep the lights flickering and the basic infrastructure from completely collapsing. You must demand to know why it had to come to this. How did we wake up in May of 2026 and find ourselves standing precariously on the very edge of the economic abyss? It is the direct, unavoidable result of years of staggering arrogance, ideological hubris, and profound strategic blindness by Western policymakers. For over a decade, politicians and unelected bureaucrats in the West aggressively, relentlessly pushed to dismantle traditional, reliable energy infrastructure. They actively demonized the fossil fuel industry, publicly starving it of necessary capital, restricting banking access, and halting exploration investment, while simultaneously disastrously failing to build a reliable, scalable, and physically viable alternative energy grid to replace it. They actually believed in their immense arrogance that they could command the physical laws of energy markets by political decree and public relations campaigns. Then, when reality struck and severe geopolitical conflicts erupted over the past few years, they panicked. They turned back to the very energy producers they had spent years alienating, insulting, and trying to bankrupt, and demanded that they pump more oil to save Western political careers. But the world does not work on command anymore. When the West made the fatal, historic decision to weaponize the global financial system, freezing sovereign foreign reserves, seizing assets, and sanctioning entire, massive economies over the past several years, they sent a terrifying, unforgettable signal to the rest of the planet. They proved to every single sovereign nation that if you hold your national wealth in Western fiat currencies or Western banking institutions, it can and will be confiscated overnight if you disobey the dictates of Washington or Brussels. Saudi Arabia watched that happen. The BRICS nations watched that happen. The entire global South watched that happen. And they learned the lesson perfectly. They realized with absolute clarity that true national sovereignty requires physically controlling your own hard commodities and actively trading them entirely outside the reach, influence, and threat of foreign financial sanctions. This $200 billion halt is the spectacular, explosive culmination of that exact realization. It is Saudi Arabia standing up on the global stage and saying, "We have the energy, we have the physical leverage, and from this day forward, we will dictate the terms of human progress." They are permanently insulating themselves from the spreading, toxic financial contagion of the Western debt markets. They are firmly linking arms with the vibrant, growing economies of the future, the massive, resource-hungry, industrializing populations of the East. As we look ahead to the opening of the trading screens this coming Monday morning, we are going to witness a terrifying symphony of financial chaos. When the Asian markets open, followed by Europe and finally New York, we will see bond yields violently react, fiat currencies wildly fluctuate, and highly leveraged equity markets bleed out in real time. The algorithmic trading bots will trigger massive, cascading sell-offs as risk models completely break down. But beyond the frantic screaming of traders and the flashing red numbers on the screens, I desperately need you to maintain your perspective, your calm, and your clarity. We here at Aurex are a brotherhood, a community of individuals who refuse to be blindfolded. We do not panic, we prepare. Understanding the deep, structural why behind these terrifying headlines is your absolute greatest armor in the difficult years to come. The global oil price shock of 2026 is not a temporary blip that will be resolved by next quarter. It is a permanent, violent structural realignment of the entire world order. It is the painful, chaotic birth of a new multipolar world where physical commodities, hard assets, and energy, not paper fiat currencies backed by nothing but debt and empty promises, are the ultimate, undeniable arbiters of global power. You must look at your own life right now and ask yourself the hard questions. How dangerously exposed are you and your family to this transition? As the cost of baseline energy explodes upward, it will relentlessly drive severe inflation into every single corner, every single crevice of the real economy. The purchasing power of your savings, your unbacked currency sitting in a traditional bank account, will rapidly, silently erode away. The global central banks will find themselves entirely trapped in a nightmare scenario of their own making. If they attempt to raise interest rates to aggressively fight this massive supply-side inflation, they will completely crush an already highly fragile, debt-burdened global economy, deliberately triggering a severe, prolonged depression. If they panic and choose to lower rates to artificially stimulate the dying economy, they will simply pour highly combustible gasoline onto the raging inflationary fire, destroying the currency entirely. They have painted themselves into a corner from which there is no mathematical escape. This is exactly why I do what I do. This is why I ask you to subscribe, to share these videos with the people you care about, and to listen carefully until the very end. The mainstream financial advisors, the wealth managers in their high-rise offices, are operating on outdated, obsolete models from 2019. They are desperately telling you to hold a traditional portfolio, to blindly trust the financial system, to stay fully invested in the stock market, and to simply wait out the storm. But the storm is not passing. The storm is the new, permanent climate. You need to violently shift your perspective toward tangible physical assets. You need to deeply understand the true, lasting value of things that absolutely cannot be printed by a desperate central bank. Physical energy, physical precious metals, strategic agricultural commodities, and personal, unshakable self-reliance. These are the true, lasting currencies of the new era we have just been thrust into. You need to take immediate, decisive action to insulate your family, your community, and your wealth from the catastrophic shocks of the failing food and energy supply chains. You need to build resilience in your local networks, acquire practical skills, and position yourself outside the blast radius of the collapsing fiat system. The story of what happened today, May 10, 2026, will be written about in heavy history books for generations to come. It will be universally remembered as the exact day the desert finally stopped playing by the rigged rules of the West. It is the day the massive $200 billion bridge was intentionally burned to the ground, and the great global oil price shock became the harsh, defining reality of our generation. Behind every massive geopolitical chess move, there is a very real, very painful human cost. The world we are stepping into tomorrow is going to get significantly more expensive, vastly more fractured, and infinitely more difficult to navigate for those who refuse to see the truth. But knowledge, when applied with courage and discipline, is absolute power. By truly understanding these massive, tectonic, macroeconomic, and geopolitical shifts before the masses do, you can position yourself not just to merely survive the coming onslaught, but to actively thrive in the midst of the chaos. You can take the steps today to protect your accumulated wealth, secure the safety of your family, and maintain your peace of mind while the rest of the world panics. I want to pause and sincerely thank you, from the very bottom of my heart, for being a vital part of this growing channel. I love all of my subscribers for your unwavering, continuous support through these dark and confusing times. You are the sole reason I dig deep into the data, bypass the media noise, and work tirelessly to bring you the real, unfiltered market updates. We are walking through this massive, historic transition together, side by side. Stay highly vigilant, stay deeply informed, and never, ever stop questioning the narrative they try to force feed you. This is John A.G. signing off for Aurex. I will see you in the next video. Stay safe out there.